Gyong-soo glanced at that guy. It seems like you are quite ignorant. Maybe your brain is just considered a part of your muscle. April. Black Lespedazus, one of the two Lespedeza brothers, is one of the members of Hwagiksa. His body is big and muscular. He has the strongest punch. Gyong-soo ducked to avoid his punch. Suddenly he asked that guy, "You, every time we meet, I see you get a little bigger." That guy is a bit confused. Looking at him, then, "So what? During the Phoenix incident, I thought you were just pretending to forget you knew me. But now it's true." Gyong-soo straightened up and looked at him. "I knew it clearly. You're just a slow guy. A useless guy who always relied on his own strength." His large hand seemed to want to grab him. In a whirling wind, Black Lespedazus opened his eyes wide to see what was in front of him. In his hand he could only grasp a black jacket. That guy suddenly squinted his eyes and laughed loudly. His hand holding the shirt clenched tightly. He looked towards Gyong-soo. "Who dares to say I'm slow? You're taking off there are my clothes. Like a prostitute. It's your shirt in a bit. And then your underwear. Keep going. I'll do it myself too, let's strip you off." He threw the shirt behind his back and slowly walked towards. Gyong-soo remembered his attacks at that time. "Because of those drugs. I thought it was all it's because I'm too slow." The eyes behind his mask glared at him. Gyong-soo seemed to see through him. "But the truth is you got faster. Right. After that day, it seemed like you were obsessed with becoming faster." Black Lespedazus tilted her head to look at him. "What? That day?" Gyong-soo replied to him. "Yes. We should recognize things that deserve recognition. You're quite an interesting person." Black Lespedazus was still bewildered. "Huh, what do you mean?" Gyong-soo continued to say. "You have tried very hard to overcome your weaknesses, to have a body like this. You must have went through a lot of hardships. But it doesn't matter, you still haven't given up. Your body is proof of the hard work that is being applied today at this time. After losing you failed that day. You stood up for yourself and you practiced to improve your weaknesses. From then on you became more and more agile. Well done, I recognize your efforts." Black Lespedazus looked at him clapping his hands and tilted his head, still not understanding what he was doing. "What are you talking about here? Who are you to dare to acknowledge me?" Gyong-soo remained calm. "Many people have difficulty in their lives. No matter how hard they try. It's all just to get your body. It's because you used drugs." Black Lespedazus was angry and his veins were full of anger. "But as if I were a natural product." Gyong-soo glanced at that guy as if mocking him. "What a pity. In order to develop more muscles, you gave up developing another part of your body. In order to help your muscles become stronger and stronger, you were not afraid to give up thinking that that part could become nothing." Black Lespedez's eyes were filled with blood and asked, "What are you talking about?" Gyong-soo smirked in disdain. "What do you mean? You used steroids, right, eunuch?" At this moment, his anger exploded. His eyes were red and he looked like he wanted to eat him alive. "Patted my body. My row was completely natural." Then raised those two big arms and rushed towards Gyong-soo. His hand grabbed the front and the entire row of chairs on that side was pushed and thrown over. Not seeing him, he started glancing around searching. Gyong-soo held a knife in his hand. "Having a giant body like this means you have to leave precious parts alone. Is there a different price?" He rushed towards him while the guy had no time to react. His two slashes went straight into Black Lespedez's stomach. He was surprised by the sudden attack. He pulled the knife back and said coldly, "It couldn't do anything. It can only get bigger and just turn itself into a useless mass of meat. Luckily I brought my weapon. That will make it easier to defeat you. And hey, it's true that you're faster, but you still don't know how to use weapons." He turned his face dark and then raised his fist. As for him, weapons are only used by lazy guys who don't have confidence in themselves. Gyong-soo only needed to lift his hand a few times and countless knife slashes cut into his body. He looked straight into that guy's eyes. "If you keep being arrogant like that, you'll soon give up. You think you lost because of your slowness. Don't you know how to ask for some advice?" Black Lespedazus looked down at his muscular body. His hand was on his left chest. He felt his chest beating up and down. His hand slowly pressed firmly against his body. Looked up at him angrily and shouted, "Who are you?" Gyong-soo raised his flashing knife. "You will soon know. Let's go back to those nightmare days." In the room, the tablet in hand was playing the battle of Gyong-soo and Black Lespedazus. A person dressed like a pastor was watching intently. Then he reached out and took off the maple leaf mask on his face. Put it down on the sofa next to him. Turned his head and continued looking at the screen. He covered one eye as if unsure and called out a name. Bai Guang. In April, Black Lespedazus, one of the Lespedeza brothers, during a brief fight with Gyeong-soo, felt pressure surge through his body, just like the first time he tried to lift weights. So, it weighs 250 kilograms. Black Lespedazus and Lespedeza are the ones who survived in the starvation room, relying on their strong will to survive. After escaping the room like that hell with non-stop training, they killed the first generation April and July. Then naturally they sat on their position. They overcame their physical shortcomings, his body, changing his skinny and shaky body into a perfect body. Thanks to his efforts helped the two cousins successfully survive. The pair of brothers, she can do anything thanks to her efforts. Life for the brothers was hard work. Because of that, they really hate December Phoenix. They think she can only get stronger by using medicine. That was something the brothers couldn't fathom. But the older brother, July, one day in the gym with bright lights, Lespedeza lifted weights while looking at his younger brother. What? I want, let's go kill Phoenix together. She makes you worry that much? You don't like what she did either. Think about it carefully. She looks delicious. You could say she looks quite pleasing to the eye. Black Lespedeza is angry with your brother. Stop it. You're under the spell of the women's amnesiacs. Don't be confused anymore. Lespedeza asked him again. Do you hate women too much? Black Lespedeza is resolutely looking at my brother. I don't hate all women or men. It doesn't matter at all. The ones who always neglect their bodies are what I hate. Especially women, and when I see my children, that bastard Phoenix, I can always feel that all the things I've done up until now just to survive have turned into nothing. Lespedeza just silently glanced at his younger brother at this time. Then he continued lifting weights and said, Okay, if you think so, then listen to me. Let's start taking action. After that, to find a possible reasonable reason used to kill Phoenix, they secretly ruined everything for her. In the room there were constant curses. Damn, damn. Phoenix sat on the chair continuously crying and holding his head screaming. Why did things turn out like this? Finally, why? If you don't solve this problem quickly, you. She kept biting my nails, trembling and crying. Name Priest UHWA said. In December that Phoenix seems like she is no longer useful to me. What do you think? Lespedeza brothers, they think they finally have a chance. The rain outside was pouring like a waterfall. A black umbrella was opened to block the rain. Black Lespedeza knelt in the rain and looked at the person holding the umbrella and cursed. You bastard. What are you going to do? What the hell? Bai Guang of his previous life looked down at him from above. I've been keeping an eye on you all this time. You've been following Phoenix, then secretly ruining all her business. That guy looked at him and admitted. What if I did that? Bai Guang lowered the umbrella in his hand to the ground. His foot slowly stepped on the canopy of the umbrella and pulled out its handle. I was the one decides his life or death. So don't get involved in our business. Just like your brotherly relationship with that guy, Phoenix and I are also in the same relationship as you guys. There, it's up to me to decide whether it lives or dies. Okay. Black Lespedez's hand curled into a fist, then he screamed. Please close your mouth. Before you can move forward. By the time Bai Guang's slash had passed through his body, his eyes were full of blood and glared at him. Bai Guang from above extended his sharp hilt towards that guy. Answer me quickly. Do you understand? He still looked up at me and refused to accept defeat. That uneducated bastard. On that pouring rain day, Black Lespedeza was beaten to a pulp. In his confusion, he realized that, for the first time in his life, there were things that he couldn't do, just by trying. Just when he thought he was close to the door dead, a noise rang out. Bai Guang looked forward. Lespedeza appeared at some point to block his finishing blow. Black Lespedeza opened his eyes to look at the person who had just appeared. His second brother. Lespedeza stared at his brother who was barely alive on the ground. Finally Black Lespedeza closed his eyes tightly. Black Lespedeza woke up from a coma. Lespedeza stood in front of him and asked, Are you awake? Black Lespedeza looked at his brother. Second brother, where is that Bai Guang? Lespedeza looked at him. While I was falling unconscious, he made a deal with me. He will temporarily ignore this and let you recover, but instead we have to leave Phoenix alone. His eyes were wide and his mouth kept moaning. His fists clenched tightly, so he trembled with anger. In the end, that guy used both hands to hit the floor hard and screamed loudly. Lespedeza looked at him. Little brother, don't be sad because of that. Because if you try more, I will definitely win. Hearing that, Black Lespedeza raised his face to look at his brother. After that day, Lespedeza used steroids. With the power of medicine, he replied obviously became stronger. The bigger his body gets, the more he hates women. Many years have passed, although Black Lespedeza has decided to take revenge on Bai Guang. Then at that moment I received news that he had died. He was dead. That guy should die. Back to the current match with Gyeong-soo. Black Lespedeza felt. But why? I have a hunch that this bastard is Bai Guang. Damn it, why is my body shaking like this? It's because of a habit I created to strengthening my muscles while practicing. Or because I'm scared. With a resounding roar, Black Lespedeza quickly rushed in front of Gyeong-soo. Bai Guang's battle with Black Lespedeza only really started now. Black Lespedeza angrily raised his hands and screamed. Rushing towards Gyeong-soo, the knife was as fast as lightning, as thin and light as leaves flying in the wind. Half of his face, his body was cut in half. Blood splattered. His eyes widened in pain. He sidestepped to watch. Black Lespedeza fell to the ground in pain. Gyeong-soo frowned in discomfort and said, "The only thing that has changed." He slashed his back a few times, causing more and more blood to spurt out. He tilted his head and asked in disdain, "Is it only speed and size? The most important thing is that technique and wisdom are not there. Still standing still like that. Are you just going to rush at me forever?" Black Lespedeza bowed his head in silence. His eyes widened, said gloomily, "No matter how many times I fail at lifting heavy weights." He pursed his lips in surprise and looked at. His dull face gradually turned back. He hesitantly said, "There is only one just once. If I can lift it just once, I win, even with you." Gyeong-soo pursed his lips and looked at him cautiously. Black Lespedeza turned around to face him and said darkly, "I just lower your eyebrows. Once is enough." Gyeong-soo held the knife forward in contempt. "You're having a rather terrifying illusion of power." He growled and rushed forward with intense thoughts in his mind. First, just once. He leaned back and stared at the hand in front of him. The knife blows were like leaves flying in the wind, coming one after another. Just this once. Black Lespedeza ignored the pain and angrily waved his hands continuously at him. Gyeong-soo pursed his lips and looked at him in discomfort. Bloody knives slashing at the target one after another. Black Lespedeza seemed immersed in hatred. Hatred, mouth wide open and growling, continuously attacking with the boiling wool in my head. "I will lift you up. This time, lift it up." Heavy hand weights are held. Light knife blows unsteady like a leaf. The pressure from the arm is applied to the barbell. It slowly moves. The wool boils in the head. Lifting. The falling leaf. The barbell moves. Black Lespedeza lies on the exercise table and tries to lift the weight up high. Lifting it. His eyes were filled with scary blood. The barbell was in the middle of his neck. His whole body was covered with blue veins. He couldn't help but doubt whether he was okay or not. "Can you do it? Return to reality." He backed away in fear, avoiding Gyeong-soo's knife. He curled his lips and smiled contemptuously. "Still a bit shallow. Your body automatically retreated right after rushing into me. It saved you." Black Lespedeza touched his neck and gasped in horror. Gyeong-soo curled his lips dangerously, pointed the knife forward and said, "Ah, by the way, that confident look, where did you go earlier? You look really small." He widened his eyes in surprise. Black Lespedeza clenched his fists angrily and asked, "What? Who the hell are you? In the house?" His voice was full of doubt and fear. Bai Guang secretly had a disciple. And even if he did, this is so damned. What the hell is going on? Gyeong-soo is now like the embodiment of a fierce beast. He smiles proudly and points his goo nose at him. Right now Black Lespedeza is very confused. But no matter how confused he is, no matter what, he was always sure about one thing. He couldn't win. When Bai Guang was announced dead, to be honest, deep down he felt extremely peaceful. Actually, he doesn't need to fight Bai Guang, because if he fights someone else, he will still lose. He always believes that if he tries hard enough, one day he will defeat them all. But Bai Guang is inborn talent. Bai Guang's talent is completely natural. More than anyone else. Before, deep in the mountains and forests, the first generation Bai Guang once said, he has the talent to kill that person. At that time he was just a tiny boy kneeling in front of him and asked in confusion, "Are you praising me?" He calmly replied, "Well, that's the best compliment I've ever said in life. That's life." First generation Bai Guang rolled his eyes and said thoughtfully, "Although for normal people it's a curse." Gyeong-su frowned and muttered, "I don't want a talent like this." In the airy atmosphere, the child's clear voice rang out, "There is no better talent than that." First generation Bai Guang stood up, put his hands in his pockets and said, "Owning a talent isn't that important anyway. The person who possesses it is what matters." He frowned seriously and continued, "Even though it was a cursed talent." Gyeong-su curiously looked at what he was saying, but if it was him, return to reality. Gyeong-su frowned and observed the person in front of him. Black Lespedazis felt incompetent in front of such a talent. Because, reminisce a bit, Lespedazza once told him, "If you try hard enough, you will win." His eyes went white. He lost his muscles. He was trying his best not to cry. Black Lespedazis suddenly spoke up. "Do you know," he said slowly, "when you lift weights, there will be safety equipment to prevent injuries." Gyeong-su calmly replied, "I know." Black Lespedazis slowly explained, "If you can't lift and get crushed by the weight, you will immediately go to the altar to watch naked cocks. That's why most people all use safety equipment when they are trying to lift the heaviest weight they can lift." Gyeong-su frowned in disdain. He was talking again and again. Were he saying his last words before dying? He lowered his head and squeezed his chin dangerously as he spoke. "But when he raised his head and his eyes widened. He started lifting the heaviest weight I could lift. I didn't use safety equipment. Either way, I choose the time at night when no one is there, so no one can help me." At that time, he lay under the barbell, his teeth clenched, blue veins appearing all over his face, growling, "I have prepared myself to die. If I can't do it then I will die. If I don't want to die then I have to." Return to reality. He raised his head and said with a grin, "Sir, I did it. For me there is nothing more terrifying than death. The weight I lifted was nothing." Gyeong-su smiled happily and said, "The explanation is a bit long. About why you are so stupid." The sunlight shined through the door frame. Black Lespedazis said coldly, "The situation is the same now just like at that moment. I didn't think I came here to die." He raised his head and widened his eyes, affirming, "But, I'm all prepared to die now." Gyeong-su curled his lips and smiled happily, pointed the knife forward to provoke. "Is that so?" Black Lespedazis, he growled. He pursed his lips and glared. Gyeong-su was surprised, watching him rush in the other direction. He had used up everything he had the strength to run away. Black Lespedazis widened his eyes and growled, rushing forward, watching the other person just run away. Gyeong-su looked at him blankly and confused. He frowned in contempt. I didn't think you would leave. But then my footsteps followed so fast that only wind left on the floor." Black Lespedazis was still running with all his might. From behind Gyeong-su, who was immediately chased after him, then slashed a line into Black Lespedazis's calf. He growled, "Don't fail. You can get out of here alive." His eyes widened in pain. Roaring, "Growl," he said with narrowed eyes. "Die." Right after that Black Lespedazis gasped loudly. His arms clung to the nearby chair. But Gyeong-su only gently dodging the chair that was being thrown at him. Inside the church was filled with scary sounds. He frowned and asked in discomfort, "Why do people keep throwing random things like that? Do you want to live? Is that so?" Black Lespedazis still held the chair in her hand and gritted her teeth and replied, "Well, whoever doesn't want to is called strange." Hearing that, Gyeong-su curled his lips sarcastically. It sounded so pitiful. He widened his eyes in surprise. Then he laughed contemptuously and then teased, "I feel sorry for you. Back to the past. Black Lespedazis always wants to die as soon as possible. Why do I so weak? Not like them. It's not fair at all. It's so unfair. What's the point in living like this? Like that is much more pitiful." That's how the two brothers entered the hungry room. Black Lespedazis bowed his head sadly. "Brother, maybe that would be better. I'm tired of trying every step one day to live." "That's it." Lespedazza sadly looked at his sick brother and encouraged him. His brother, trying to survive is not pitiful at all. That sentence continued more motivation to live in Black Lespedazus. Until now he faced Gyeong-soo coldly repeating every word like that. He said seriously, the only thing in my life that is not pitiful at all was my effort to survive. That changed me. The more I listened, the deeper my eyes became. Reminisced a bit. When we were kids, Phoenix and I were like that too. Then Gyeong-soo closed his eyes tightly and muttered, "That's right." He raised his head and gritted his teeth and said, "I take back what I just said. But the truth is that you will die here. No change." I haven't finished speaking. Then he shouted loudly. His hand lifted up the injured leg. Black Lespedazus jumped forward quickly and fled. Seeing that, Gyeong-soo frowned angrily and said, How did he intend to run with those legs?" Suddenly his eyes widened in surprise. What he didn't expect was that he dared to run to the window. His body crashed into the glass and he rushed out. His hand was in front of his face, shielding his face from the glass shards. His body plummeted downward. The glass door was broken with a huge hole. Gyeong-soo immediately ran over in fear. His eyes widened in surprise. His arms clung to the floor. Gyeong-soo stood at the window in surprise, looking at Black Lespedazus' body lying face down on the ground. He trembled and tried to move his hands. He looked down and asked contemptuously, "Are you planning to live with that disabled body for the rest of your life?" But he still stubbornly crawled forward. Black Lespedazus lay prone on the grassy ground. "Just need me, it's good to still be alive. If I survive, then I can try harder. Injuries like this are nothing to me." Then he raised his head, leaned his body forward and growled, "I will survive. I will do everything to live." Gyeong-soo glanced at him who was struggling just now, trying to move his body. He pursed his lips in thought. This guy, I can't in order for him to live. Bai Gwang felt that Black Lespedazus deserved to live. So Gyeong-soo glared dangerously at him. Then he raised the dagger high. Then he immediately bent down and threw it downwards. Black Lespedazus glanced back in fear. The knife rushed like the wind. But suddenly, he gritted his teeth and raised his arm. Defending, the knife was deeply embedded in his arm. Seeing this scene, Gyeong-soo couldn't help but curl his lips in disgust. Black Lespedazus ignored his bloody body, clenched his teeth and growled, "Live. I have to live. If I live, then I will be able to work harder." Gyeong-soo looked at the bloody floor below and couldn't help but think. At this rate he will die of blood loss. No, he will definitely survive. Leaving it like that forever won't work. Hollow Mountai suddenly appeared and rushed to attack. He gritted his teeth and retreated to avoid, but still could not avoid completely. A scratch appeared on his cheek filled with blood. Then he stopped, standing still, looking at the masked man in front of him. Gyeong-soo pursed his lips and frowned, wiping the blood on his cheek. And Hollow Mountai raised his sword and looked at him with dangerous eyes. A deep voice. Hollow Mountai. Jung-ho and his group were still having a hard time. The church echoed with heavy panting. The Leaf couple walked together. Yellow Leaf panted and complained. "Really tired. Why are they defending so well?" Park Jung-ho stood behind a table muttering, "Luckily we have many things that can be used as a shield." Sang-ho also hid behind a table frowning and said, "Real men should attack, not defend. Doing this is embarrassing to death." Hearing that, Jung-ho scolded him, "Shut up and go straight." In Byun-jang-wook's special force, everyone is divided into different positions, suitable for their strength. Between the sniper and support positions are Kim Dong-chol and Shin So-hee. The vanguard is Byun-jang-wook, Cha Yun and Choi Hoon. And finally, holding the air defense position, who else is Jung-ho and Sang-ho. Yellow Leaf frowned in disdain. "What's the point of you guys doing that? You'll just die anyway." Red Leaf clasped his weapon in his hand dangerously and continued, "I'd rather die right now than hurry up." Then she waved her hand and swung the chain towards the two of them. She opened her eyes wide and said in a scary voice, "Let me help you." Jung-ho hid behind the door and remained stubborn. Extremely powerful, he raised his voice provocatively. "Come on, just resist a little longer. The captain will come right away." Meanwhile, Jang-wook and Ah-hyung are searching the hallway. He held a cigarette and said into the walkie-talkie, "This is Byun-jang-wook. I'm on my way to Jung-ho and Sang-ho's room." Heard this news, Jung-ho smiled happily and said, "See," Jang-wook said into the walkie-talkie, "that was my original plan." But after hearing the sound of a window breaking on the second floor and a strange man's voice, I'll go check to see what's going on out there. Just continue my mission. Let's go. It's over. Then the two of them opened their eyes wide in bewilderment. Then they both tilted their heads to look at each other. Their eyes turned to the two sisters who were looking at them with red eyes. Faltering, please, let's talk a little, while the sky is still blue and the air is fresh. In contrast, there was a long red streak on the ground. Jang-wook and Ah-hyung stood looking at the red streak and wondered. What was the blood stain? Then they looked at the broken second floor window. Jang-wook said, it seemed like there was someone fell from the second floor and crawled away. Ah-hyung was surprised when she heard that. Was Kim Gyong-soo on the second floor? Then she called Gyong-soo through the walkie-talkie. Kim Gyong-soo, Kim Gyong-soo, are you okay? Jang-wook stood behind her and looked at her. The other end of the walkie-talkie fell to the ground. At this time, she worriedly told Jang-wook again. The connection had been lost. If Kim Gyong-soo was taken down, what would she do? What should we do? Let's follow the blood trail. Or go to the second floor first. Jang-wook was thoughtful and said nothing. Just silently looked at the blood trail on the ground. At this time Jung-ho and the others were still struggling with the girls. Yellowleaf holds a very powerful cutter. They are being chased by two sisters. Yellowleaf and Redleaf. Yellowleaf despises. Men are truly pathetic. While Redleaf chimed in. Shouldn't men run away? The two of them angrily turned around and said. Men sometimes have to run away. If they have equipment with them. We have already defeated a few people. Immediately Yellowleaf rushed forward faster with a clear expression on her face. Defending herself. Then she jumped high into the air, swinging the cutter in her hand towards Jung-ho and Sang-ho. Her eyes no longer had any humanity left and said to them. Stay in hell. Suddenly a great force flew towards. Yellowleaf was kicked hard in the stomach, while before she could react. She spat out a mouthful of blood after that kick. Right after that Yellowleaf was kicked back where Redleaf was standing. At this moment Jung-ho and Sang-ho happily looked at their savior. Team Captain Jang-wook stood in front of them and promptly rescued Byun Jang-wook. During his long time working in the Special Forces team, he met countless strong people. Even if he has just a little physical contact with someone, he can judge that person. When shaking hands with Kim Gyong-soo, remember when he extended his hand to invite Gyong-soo? And while they shook hands, Jang-wook realized something and opened his eyes wide. Among the strongest people he has ever met, Kim Gyong-soo's strength is the third strongest. Returning to the present, Ah-hyung was still worried about the safety of his teammates and quickly spoke up. Captain, what should I do now? I contacted him but no one answered. If I have to go to the second floor. Then, suddenly Jang-wook interrupted her. Senior Police Officer Kim Gyong-soo. Don't worry about him. Ordered Ah-hyung to follow the blood trail. While he went to help Jung-ho and Sang-ho, Redleaf released light. He looked menacingly at Yellowleaf and asked. You got off guard, right? So Yellowleaf stood up and answered. I'm sorry. Jung-ho immediately warned. Captain, be careful, guys. There, Jang-wook had not finished his sentence. He knew. He looked at Yellowleaf and Redleaf and thought to himself. Those two girls have natural endurance and quite good strength. And Yellowleaf wiped the blood. Said to Redleaf, Sister, that guy's strength is quite strong. Then Jang-wook looked at Redleaf. Is that red-haired sister as strong as you? Or even stronger? Redleaf's face was expressionless, replied Yellowleaf. So what? Jang-wook touched the cigarette in his mouth and thought. This mission has more difficult opponents than I thought. I have to kill these bitches. Today there must have been blood on his hands. At that time in the church, Maple Leaf was still staring at the screen. For some reason the screen had interference. Suddenly Maple Leaf thought of December. Hollow Mountai. He destroyed all the CCTV on the second floor. Why? Maple Leaf loosened her arms. In the church there was the sound of Maple Leaf praying. Oh my God, please, open your lips. The first Maple Leaf sat on the floor with a seductive figure. He said he didn't want to be dumped. Why do you think like that? The boy raised his head to look at her and replied. Saint, I love you. The first Maple Leaf's eyes closed a bit. Then the first Maple Leaf stood up and walked in front of him. That means as long as I don't leave you, no matter what I do, you still love me, right? The boy's eyes were full of infatuation and happily replied. Yes, holy lady. The boy from that day is Maple Leaf now. He held that thing without saying anything. then forcefully crushed that thing. Maple Leaf stood frozen in the middle of the large room. He darkened his face and lamented. Being thrown away again, he held the chain shaped like a cross. Now, then pulled out a key from the cross. He walked to the box loud and unlocked. Suddenly everything started shaking. He said coldly, "There is no other choice." Then his finger placed on a patterned button. In another location also had a large tile with a similar pattern. There was a sigh. Phew. Gyong-hee was standing next to Yun. In front of her were the defeated subordinates. Cha-Yun resisted. No need to say, "Looks like everything is done cleaning up." Then she turned around and said to Gyong-hee, who was standing next to her, "Now go back and join the others." Yun didn't finish his sentence before the ground began to shake, startling them. The lamp on the wall also shook. In Jang Wook's position, Jung-ho and Sang-ho also began to feel the vibration. Moved. They wondered about this. What? Jang Wook seemed to notice something. And the two sisters Yellow Leaf and Red Leaf showed extremely frightened faces. They exclaimed in unison, "Mr. Maple Leaf." Towards Gyong-hee, they still had no questions. Earthquake. Gyong-hee sat on the ground looking in the direction Cha-Yun was observing in confusion. They realized. The floor. That's where the pattern on the mushroom button opened a path. A pair of black clogs slowly walked up. Yun's eyes became sharp. Shiny black hair passed by. A woman suddenly appeared in front of Yun and Gyong-hee. Yun just stood motionless and watched. And Gyong-hee couldn't help but ask, "What is that?" So, Black Leaf went up with three other strange people walking behind. She hugged her face and laughed. "Mr. Maple Leaf." Black Leaf's face was filled with indescribable infatuation. Just only Maple Leaf and January did not come from Hwagiksa Temple. He rearranged the remnants and applied to join Hwagiksa. So that he could join Hwagiksa, he could not retain his belongings. Hwagiksa did not know. He had sworn not to keep any subordinates. But Maple Leaf, whom he hid, had a secret trump card. People think they died with the first Maple Leaf, but in fact they are still alive thanks to the second Maple Leaf. 3 of the 12 apostles. The one with ears like ram's horns is Matthew. The man, the white-haired man wearing a blindfold, is Philip. And the man with a face full of stitches is Jacob. Gyong-hee panicked and asked, "What are these people?" Yun remained calm and said nothing. She looked towards Black Leaf and the 3 apostles and thought to herself, "That woman smelled dangerous." Suddenly she rushed in front of Yun. She immediately quickly blocked the attack. Black Leaf's attack. When she rushed closer to her, Yun opened her eyes wide and looked at Black Leaf. At this time she blocked Yun's punch and calmly said, "I don't think Mr. Maple Leaf summoned us back. Because where are you guys?" Then Black Leaf looked up. Maybe there was something up there. Suddenly Yun kicked hard towards Black Leaf. She easily dodged the kick. She also gave Yun a kick back in the face. She was kicked in the face and spit out blood. And then Yun fell to the ground in pain. Gyong-hee regained her composure and called out worriedly, "Money, senior." Then Black Leaf turned around and called, "Matthew." He cautiously answered, "Yes." Then she showed an expectant face and said, "I want to quickly go on a date with Mr. Maple Leaf." "These people, you can deal with them." Matthew replied with an expressionless face. "Yes." "Then I'll leave and let Matthew move forward." Gyong-hee saw that and immediately stood in front of Yun and shouted, "Don't come here. I said don't come here." Meanwhile Yun stood up after Black Leaf's kick and rushed forward. She jumped up and used her legs to wrap around Matthew's neck in Matthew's surprised eyes. Then quickly tightening and rotating her legs. With the rotation force created by Yun, Matthew's head turned from front to back, and she jumped to the ground. Immediately Black Leaf turned to look. Next to him was Jacob, whose eyes were wide open in surprise at the scene that had just happened. Yun's voice rang out, the one who wanted to quickly end it and go on a date. "It wasn't just you." After saying that she got married, his hand wiped the blood off his mouth. Black Leaf looked thoughtfully at the girl in front of her. Then she laughed loudly and ran away with a playful look. No one asked. She just left. In Yun's surprise, she got angry and immediately ran after her, saying falsely, "Behold." Suddenly Philip and Jacob blocked the way in front of her. Yun swung her fist out. Then she punched Jacob hard in the stomach. Then Philip rushed forward. She also punched the opponent, but Philip dodged her attack. Yun felt a bit surprised. Right after that, Philip punched her in the stomach, making Yun wince in pain from the punch just now. Then she grabbed one shoulder of Philip's shirt and pulled forcefully. Philip walked towards me, then threw his head straight at Philip's face. A spectacular knockout that caused Philip to have a nosebleed and fall back. However, she still did not let go, but swung her hands to grab Philip's head. Again, with her face full of anger, Yoon broke Philip's neck. Gyong-hee standing nearby couldn't help but be surprised by this ability. She was crazy. Then suddenly Yoon shouted loudly towards Gyong-hee. Gyong-hee gave this guy to her. While she was still bewildered, not understanding what was going on, Yoon ran away. Then she was stunned for a moment. At the same time, Jacob stood up after Yoon's punch earlier. The two of them looked at each other silently. Right after that, Jacob ran away, and Gyong-hee, still in shock but still chasing after. Suddenly a bolt of electricity passed by. Jacob was shocked by that beam of electricity but couldn't do anything. That was Gyong-hee's electric gun. She stood behind Jacob, shooting the electric gun at him. Jacob turned back to look at her with murderous eyes. And Gyong-hee stiffened, not knowing what to do or say. Bang bang. At the same time, there in the hallway, Yoon was chasing Black Leaf. She tried her best to chase that crazy girl, Cha Yoon, after graduating from police school when she was only about 20 years old. She once had a goal of having a rose of Sharon flower on her badge. One day, after falling in love with a boy, in order to be with that man, she asked to join the Special Forces team. Through a lot of effort, finally able to work together with that man, love grew more and more. Just like that, it's been nearly 10 years of working with that man, and she's gradually getting older. 34-year-old Yoon hurriedly ran after Black Leaf and asked loudly, "Why are you running so fast?" And Black Leaf was like a crazy person, running and laughing out loud. Master Maple Leaf, Master Maple Leaf, Master Maple Leaf, how long has it been?" She ran behind Black Leaf and said angrily, "If it were me 10 years ago, she caught you." Hearing that, she immediately raised her voice to provoke her. "Run faster. You run slower than me. Probably because the love of the person you like is not as great as love. My love for Mr. Maple Leaf." Yoon immediately showed her attitude. What is that crazy woman saying? But suddenly got so angry, crazy, her face appeared a few blue veins from anger. Right after that, Yoon said to her, "You like fast, right?" Black Leaf looked back after hearing Yoon speak. What caught her eyes was a charitable smile of Yoon. "So the guy you like must have come out quickly, right?" Black Leaf glared in shock at those words. She stopped immediately. Then slowly she turned to look at Yoon. The laughing attitude from before had turned into anger. Black Leaf's face darkened and he spoke harshly. "What did you say?" Yoon just stood there laughing. "Is that so? It must be true. But why did you say that? Why did she suddenly get so mad?" At that time, her face was full of sinister intent and she threatened, "I will kill you, aunt." After being provoked, Black Leaf angrily rushed to attack Yoon. "She looks like a ferocious beast. Die, 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 die. Take that back for me." Yoon immediately dodged her attack. She just hit the opponent's dangerous spot and stubbornly replied, "I don't like it." As expected, that punch made Black Leaf's face stiffen in pain. Right after that, Yoon continuously kicked her body. Mourning, the mouth kept repeating, "Don't like, don't like, don't like, don't like, don't like." At this point, she no longer defended but took a stance to counterattack. Then she coldly spoke, and seconds later she threw her fist forward. But Yoon turned around to avoid the attack. Her whole body turned around, counterclockwise, then swung her forearm forward, until Yoon's tickle was close to Black Leaf's face. Then she gradually realized that in the end, because she didn't have time to dodge, she intrigued by that sudden attack. Yoon didn't forget to add another sentence. "You don't like that, you crazy person." Then she fell down, her head hitting the hard ground. The more Yoon looked at it, the more terrified she became. Usually, why do you wear such a killer lipstick color? Because of a man you lose all your strength. Do you think your hair color suits you? Black Leaf quickly stood up after hearing this. She groaned, then put her hand behind her waist looking for something to say. "We're both women, and it's okay. I don't intend to touch you." That's it. Black Leaf took out a shiny black round card. Unexpectedly, when she turned the round card face, sharp spikes appeared. She held the weapon in her hand and said in a cold voice, "But aunt started earlier." Yoon also smiled back. "You crazy person. You look more like an aunt than him. 12 Apostles, an organization founded by the first Maple Leaf, one of among the strongest people of the month. They were very complacent about their strength, but still had to submit to the Bodhisattva's leadership. Unable to endure it, after the battle with Hwagiksa Temple, they suffered heavy losses and had to flee to the Philippines. The remaining people were killed by Bai Guang, exhausted by consecutive defeats. Defeated people, but even so, at this time, Gyeonghee's battle with Jacob was not very positive. She was kicked in a dangerous place by Jacob. Jacob's eyes widened to the point of turning white. Immediately after that, Gyeonghee quickly retreated. After defending, Jacob's eyes looked coldly at her. His legs were as sturdy and strong as a buffalo. The strong are still the strong. A match that can't see any chance of winning. But there must be a reason. That's why Yun handed Jacob over to Gyeonghee to handle. While dealing with the white-shirted followers, Yun looked up and was extremely surprised. Gyeonghee continuously attacked. What is worth mentioning is that she acted very decisively, only hitting the weak points of her body. Even her eyes were covered with thick iron energy. Yun looked at the strong girl in front of her in disbelief. After a moment of silence she asked, "Mus Gyeonghee?" The other party replied a bit hesitantly. Yes, yes. She continued, "Mus Gyeonghee, just sit there. I will handle this for you." This made Gyeonghee even more panicked. After that, she sadly asked herself, as expected, I couldn't be of any help. I knew that and listened to Gyeong-soo. But in Yun's heart, she thought differently. Who did she learn from? Not yet awake yet carrying such iron energy. The attack position was only aimed at a vulnerable place. Although the move was a bit clumsy. But if the attack had been more precise, those people could have been killed. That scenario is so scary. You can do it for Gyeonghee. Now Gyeonghee is crying again. Hoo Gyeong-soo. Save me. Then she expressed her pain heart. Kim Gyeong-soo. At first when I saw the image of Kim Gyeong-soo being determined about being treated unfairly, I thought it was silly, but part of me thought it was also great. And then he solved the situation. Seeing Kim Gyeong-soo rushed forward, Jo Gyeonghee thought Kim Gyeong-soo was so cool. Thinking about this she denied herself. No, that person is not cool. Beats me every day during practice. He has changed. Of course when I get compliments I feel very happy. For Gyeonghee, Gyeong-soo is completely different from Seong-hyun and Hee-jun. Having crammed the teaching method into the mind of Gyeonghee, who thinks he is smart, all of which are Gyeong-soo's master moves. But her body couldn't keep up. At times like that she lost her spirit and sat down on the ground. I'm trash. And at times like that, an energetic voice rang out, dispelling her self-consciousness. T-in-you, now calm down. Get motivated. Don't be discouraged. Stand up and practice. Any way you can win. Right now, when facing the enemy, she silently thought to herself. That's right. Don't be discouraged. Thought then she screamed loudly. Used all her strength to rush towards Jacob. Because of the difference in strength, too much deviation, every attack was dodged by Jacob. In the moment of resting to catch his breath, it seemed that Gyeonghee's movements reminded Jacob of someone. What is it? Even though it was a very clumsy attack. Again Gyeong-soo's voice rang out in her mind. Get motivated. Jacob was then surprised to realize. Memories of the day Bai Guang massacred the entire church came rushing back. The moment Jacob frantically crawled to escape. For a moment the nightmare deep in Jacob's subconscious awakened again. Gyeonghee's movements. It reminded Jacob of his obsession image. Horrifying obsession. Surely Jacob will never be able to forget this whole life. Then Jacob stood still like heaven. His whole body was covered with fear. Jacob began to moan. Tears flowed out of his eyes from who knows when. Then Jacob screamed pitifully, while Gyeonghee on this side didn't understand what was going on. Let out a loud sound. While running, suddenly Jacob's foot twisted to one side and fell to the ground. Echoed throughout the cellar. Jacob crawled forward. Mouth still kept screaming. Didn't want to. Gyeonghee witnessed everything but didn't understand what was going on. She raised her eyebrows and wondered. Why did she suddenly scream like that? In her heart she thought to herself. Even though she didn't understand anything. Now, in a moment she rushed over. Right when Jacob was right in her sight. Gyeonghee immediately tickled her from above and right down right in the middle of her enemy's back, gritting my teeth tightly. I couldn't help but feel joy and opportunity. After delivering the fatal blow, she began to check to see if the enemy had any remaining consciousness. Byung-hee observed Jacob closely. After she confirmed that the enemy was completely unconscious, a choking sound that she couldn't help but burst out throughout the dungeon. Her eyes lit up and said loudly, "She won. Jo Byung-hee won." At that moment she became even more excited. The smile on her lips became brighter, thinking, "Hooray, he will definitely praise me again." Black Leaf rotated her weapon with a mysterious face, causing Yun's concentration to be attracted and gradually more controlled. Black Leaf launched the weapon at Yun, but she was able to avoid it. The weapon's piercing paths continued to go crazy. Black Leaf took the toy back. Yun really couldn't believe her eyes. Black Leaf spoke seductively, "You're so good at hiding." Yun looked carefully at Black Leaf's weapon and quickly thought, "What weapon is that? I can't see clearly. If only there was equipment here." Then that weapon once again moved towards her. This time Black Leaf successfully attacked her. Her hands were hit. Even her thighs were so. They spat blood. Black Leaf asked Yun, "What are you thinking? Are you afraid of dying?" Yun repeated her words. "Are you afraid of death? Sometimes death is good." I'm surprised. "Huh," Yun said firmly. "If I die, the captain will spend his whole life avenging me. Isn't that romantic?" Black Leaf looked at her with contemptuous eyes. She smiled. "So you die." Yun suddenly stopped. "But, I won't die because of you." Suddenly a punch from Jang-wook. She lost her balance and fell backwards. His hand moved forward extremely fast, grabbed Red Leaf's weapon. The chain accidentally hit his hand, bleeding. But Jang-wook remained steadfast in the face of Red Leaf's attack. He decisively pulled up the chain. Red Leaf accidentally let her guard down and took her with her. Obviously she was surprised when he lost his vigilance. Jang-wook quickly gave her a punch right in the face. Accidentally from behind, Yellow Leaf suddenly flew to attack him. But something happened, causing her to turn pale. Of course, a shoulder jerk from Jang-wook was enough to make her turn back. Jung-ho stood behind in boredom. Captain allowed himself to be hurt while fighting them. Sang-ho also unanimously continued, "If there were equipment here, they wouldn't be injured so much." Yellow Leaf, Red Leaf trembled and knelt before Jang-wook. Jang-wook thought to himself, "Those girls. I'm afraid of my own strength, so I can't unleash my full strength. Or maybe it's due to other reasons. But fortunately, those girls had no resistance left, so they couldn't kill them." Jang-wook appeared. "Command, tie them up with fishing line." Jung-ho said, "Yes." Sang-ho also responded, "Let me tie them up." The light was still shining. Black Leaf and Red Leaf were blinded and unconscious. Sang-ho scolded, "He told me to tie it up." Jung-ho argued bluntly, "Shut up, you son of a bitch." Sang-ho heard that and immediately reminded him, "Don't curse. Captain, remember to scold this guy when you come back." Jang-wook sits and smokes a cigarette. "Stop arguing, just move towards Police Officer Yun." Sang-ho suddenly realized, "That reminds me, it seems Senior Yun arrived a bit late." Jung-ho guessed, "It seems like there is someone strong blocking it downstairs." Jang-wook calmly, "Well, I'm not worried about that. I won't." Nothing happened. Suddenly there was a call. The captain made Jang-wook glance over to see. It was Yun, whose mouth was being squeezed. Black Leaf grabbed her head and seemed to have caught her. "Yun." She still had a ghostly look and spoke. "We're here." Jung-ho rushed forward in panic. Yun's father, Senior. Sang-ho was also startled. "What is it?" But Jang-wook was already dark. Her face darkened and she rushed forward. She jumped back to dodge the attack. "Wow." Slowly stepping back, Jang-wook shouted, "Just one shot and you'll be gone. Put her down now." Black Leaf provoked, "Why are you so angry? I should thank you for bringing someone here. You showed the way on the pumpkins. And it seems like you don't know the current location. It's mine. If you dare come one step closer, I'll strangle this girl to death." Black Leaf glanced sideways. She punched Yun hard in the throat. Not only that, she also kept talking in a joking tone. "No way, no way. Are you going to bite your tongue to death? I said I would kill you, but..." Suddenly there was an electric current. That electric current looked like down to Black Leaf. She turned to look at the source of that electric current. Bang! That was the tip of a stun gun. Byung-hee continuously shouted, "Bang! Bang!" She suddenly faltered. "What are you doing?" There was the fist rushed towards Black Leaf, which was Jung-ho, but she dodged in time. but another kick hit her in the face. Sang-ho successfully defeated Black Leaf, causing her to fly away. Jang-wook stood there praising him. Great job, Gyeong-hee, she immediately asked. Is Senior Yun okay? Jang-wook requested. Jung-ho, Sang-ho, you guys take Police Officer Yun out for treatment. Let's go, the two of them said in unison. Yes. The rest Jang-wook gave orders to Gyeong-hee. Gyeong-hee, she went up there and joined with Corporal Gyeong-soo. She hesitantly accepted the order. Yes. Black Leaf slowly stood up. Jang-wook said with a firm voice. I will end this place and return to everyone soon. Black Leaf was proud. I understand. Lord Maple Leaf summoned us. Am I for you? Yoon Jang-wook has met many strong people while serving in the special forces. Strong people all have their own fighting style. Style of confusing opponents with not flashy. Or a snake-like style. Hiding one's breath and attacking from behind. Or a baton-like style that penetrates gaps in the opponent's moves. But no matter how hard you try, no matter how you observe and judge, it is still impossible to recognize Yoon Jang-wook's fighting style. A fighting style that is not afraid of being hurt. Black Leaf let out a sigh. I took back the weapon in my hand. Looked at Jang-wook. You fight too harshly. Don't you care that much? Not caring about your body is a fatal weakness. He asked. Is that so? I don't think my fighting style is a weakness. Black Leaf asked him. If we fight like that, those eyes will also go blind. You are very strong. If you wear a blindfold too. Yoon Jang-wook's fighting style. As mentioned before, the simple and brutal way of fighting is to directly attack the opponent with flesh and blood. He looked at her. I don't have any equipment right now, everything. I thought I might lose these hands. Black Leaf was interested. I was curious who the man with the short hair liked was, so I came here. You are truly crazy beyond imagination. Jang-wook said without paying attention. My fighting style. I don't think that's a weakness at all. She turned the weapon in her hand. If so, then you won't live much longer. He just calmly didn't worry at all. And your boss didn't call you here for me. It wasn't me, but another strong person climbed up there. Black Leaf absent-mindedly thought, is there another person as strong as him? At this time Jang-wook started to attack. You know, strong people are often more cowardly than anyone else. I've trained all my life to have more strength. I know how strong my strength is. That's why strong people avoid fighting with me. She quickly threw the weapon in her hand at Jang-wook. A straight slash into his stomach. Her huge fist accompanied the scream of Jang-wook, if you want to come down. If you want to die. Black Leaf quickly used her hand to block his attack. Jang-wook scorned. Then I can kill you without losing anything. Her whole body trembled with resistance. Blocking her great power, her weapon continued to rush forward, grazing and slashing the opponent's face. Jang-wook leaned over and continued punching. What do you think? If you want to help your boss, you have to be alive to be able to go up there. But can you do it? I told you, I don't think there's any problem with my fighting style. This time I'm ready to give up your hands to rush into attack. But which part will you give up? He looked at her trembling arms that had blocked her attack. Her eyes, fingers, nose, whatever it was also. We have to choose the parts that will hinder the fight as little as possible. Because that man is stronger than me. While the battle between Gyeong-soo and Hollow Mountain is still ongoing, Gyeong-soo stepped back to avoid that guy's attack. From far away that guy came, jumped into the air preparing to slash. Gyeong-soo raised his eyes to look at him. He quickly took the knife and moved forward, then slashed Hollow Mountain in the stomach. Bai Gwang and Hollow Mountain first met when he was an assassin. Bai Gwang met many months. He had outstanding talent, but no one was as strong as him. That's why Bai Gwang felt frustrated towards Hollow Mountain, who was as strong as him. It was an annoying move. Hollow Mountain also noticed the same thing. That Bai Gwang was as strong as him. The moon in the mountain and the big tree by the river. Hollow Mountain raised his sword and looked straight at him. Kim Gyeong-soo also pulled out his knife and looked at him. They were ready to end this fight. Gyeong-hee was in the hallway looking at the surrounding situation and shouted. Oh, how many guys did they knock down? Then, what if they wake up? She glanced at the other side. Then shouted happily, there's the door. Pushed the door open and she called out. Kim Gyeong-soo. Gyeong-hee's eyes widened after seeing what was inside. What are these things? The prayer chairs inside the room were broken and lying all over the place. In a room in another, Maple Leaf's voice rang out. The fighting has stopped. The verdict has appeared. Black Leaf was also held back. After the special police force and my organization fought each other to regain power. Is that plan to end it all with Hollow Mountai? No matter what you think. Either way, I can't understand. So Black Lespedasis is also the subject to be dealt with. I really don't understand. I don't understand. He slowly raised his hand to cover his imperfect face, then shouted loudly. What exactly is this situation? In front of him appeared a sword being dragged on the ground. Red Maple Leaf slowly raised her eyes. It was Hollow Mountai, who as soon as he arrived, he put his sword on his shoulder and looked at him. It was not Hollow Mountai but Bai Guang. The name Maple Leaf looked at him in shock. He quickly reached into his shirt and pulled out the maple leaf-shaped blade rushed towards him. Gyeong-su slashed a few times, causing that guy's blades to break in half. Maple Leaf stepped back in fear. Even the Hollow Mountai was dead. Couldn't it be? Come on, what's wrong? What's going on? What's going on? What is this situation? What's going on? Gyeong-su interrupted his words. No need to worry. After all, it's one thing. It's been decided. If you don't turn yourself in, you'll die here. He still wanted to ask, what's going on? Suddenly Gyeong-su stared at him. Name Maple Leaf now also noticed his attentive gaze. Gyeong-su said, are you that guy? The guy who secretly followed Maple Leaf first when she died? He's still not there. What are you talking about? So, you didn't keep your promise to me. You are the second Maple Leaf. What are you talking about? Gyeong-su said it again. I already said it. I'm Bai Guang. Have you forgotten the promise that day? That day he knelt before Bai Guang's eyes. Now Maple Leaf also remembered the promise. In the forest under the bright sunlight of the day, Bai Guang looked at the person who had just appeared in front of him. The first Maple Leaf lifted her hair and looked at him. Is it you, second generation Bai Guang? So young. Can you show your face like this? He glanced at her. No problem. Anyway, those people can't look at each other for long. She raised her hand to take down the mask. Then we don't have to wear it. Let's help each other on this mission. Bai Guang. He looked in the other direction. Among her subordinates, it was said that there were 12 apostles. The two children standing there were one of the apostles. The first Maple Leaf also turned to look at them. No, they are not apostles. They are young leaves. When the maple leaf burns red and the leaves change color, tinged with bright red, when the maple leaf falls, along with the others, yellow leaves, then Maple Leaf will return to being these young green leaves. These beautiful young leaves have received a lot of my love. You asking like that means you care about, am I right? We seem to be compatible. Bai Guang just glanced at her. No, what she did was quite similar to a bodhisattva. She just wished she couldn't kill them immediately but had to be patient. The first Maple Leaf laughed. What are you talking about? Absolutely not. These children truly love me. Then she bent down to ask them. Right? Only saw two children smilingly looking up at her. Yes, Holy Lady. This is Bai Guang's first meeting with her. The second generation Maple Leaf and Black Leaf. The corpses of their subordinates were lying on the ground. The Red Room stepped on one of them's head. I can't believe there are still so many remnants of their guys left. What bastard persistence. Bai Guang behind glanced at her. That woman is really strong. Then the apostles must be equally strong. And the other two, in the future surely will definitely become people with extraordinary strength. Especially that girl. In the future they will definitely be as strong as Mei. Suddenly the first Maple Leaf bent down to look at him. Just as he said, rumor has it. You're very strong. I want you. You're so young. If you're with me, I'll definitely love you. Bai Guang bluntly replied. I refuse. Even though I don't know the situation. What is love? But surely what she did was not for love. She repeated. Not love. He continued. Looking at those children was enough to know. Happiness and sadness depend on each her words. Always with fearful eyes. She must have fallen into a place of terrible fear. Is that called love? She smirked. Fear is also love. What is love? Is when you look at the other person. You will feel your heart beating fast. No matter what you do, you will remember that love. Without that person you cannot live. She slowly brought her face closer to him. It's the same now. My heart beats fast when I see you fighting. Do you want to feel it? The feeling of my heart beating continuously. Bai Guang is indifferent. Dislike. The first Maple Leaf stepped back. I'll wait for the answer to the confession at another time. He repeated again. I said I don't like it. She laughed. I still have to love it if I don't like it. In the end, she led the two children away and left a sentence saying, look forward to it in a few years. Something very happy will happen. Bai Guang just silently looked in that direction. 3 years later at that meeting, the first generation Maple Leaf led the apostles and subordinates to attack Hwagiksa temple when months were absent. Priest Uhwa used a hammer to hit a subordinate's head so much that it broke. Around him, other subordinates continued to rush in. His right hand continued to spin the rosary. His left hand continuously punched the apostles in the face. The whole room turned red, smiled and looked at him. My name is Uhwa, look at you. I saw the signs a long time ago. Do you want to point a knife at me? She smiled. I don't want to live in fear of being abandoned. Please try your best to fight until the months come back. Bodhisattva. Uhwa narrowed his eyes. How dare you dare to challenge me? Okay, go ahead, you arrogant and unreasonable thing. Maple Leaf and the 8 apostles led 60 red-shirted disciples, only to attack the Bodhisattva. The first Maple Leaf looked at him, frustrated and lost. Impossible. And the others month after month returned to. High above, the first generation Black Lespedeza squatted down to observe. It was really messy, wasn't it? The second generation Peony stood behind her and also looked down. What should I say? Let's quickly clean them up and go eat. The bodies of the 10 red-shirted apostles were lying on the ground. The first generation Cherry Blossom looked down. Rebel, must be angry, very fierce. The first generation Hollow Mountai stood behind her and asked her, hey Cherry Blossom, just let those 2 children go. The first generation Cherry Blossom turned her head back and replied, it's not impossible, that woman that's quite strong. But I'm sure the other months will take care of it themselves. The first generation Hollow Mountai asked her, I don't know, because the children below are aiming for her position. I'm too impatient. So, even though you and I have a lot of feelings, are you satisfied with the 2 people who stand in for the Cherry Blossom position? You're noisy. You will also lose your position as the best one to the second Bai Guang anyway. He's calm, never fought with him, and I wasn't robbed of the monthly position. Right, so I don't care. Maple Leaf, after losing, took the lead. Remnants to the Philippines. She sat on the chair heartlessly holding her head and biting her nails thinking. Why did she lose? What? Where did she go wrong? Remembering that day, I shouted forward. Apostles move. I said move. Didn't you listen to me? Uhwa said loudly in front of her, making the first Maple Leaf's eyes widen. If it were you, can you move? The fear I bring is much scarier than you. Remembering his devil-like face, the first Maple Leaf held her head and screamed loudly. The people around came to ask, Lord Maple Leaf. She looked at them, young Leaf apostles. Talk to me for a bit. She thought in her heart. Yes, I realized, my love is lacking in many things. The first Maple Leaf was defeated after the battle with Hwagiksa temple. With growing fear, she began to brainwash the apostles and believers. And young leaves. The first Maple Leaf held a hot piece of iron in her hand. She smiled savagely, raised the iron bar and said gently, come here, my young leaves. The young man in front of him looked at her slightly warily and called out, Saintess. Looking at the children shivering, she did not pee but calmly asked, why do you hesitate? No matter what I do, you still love me, right? Come here quickly. In the end, the children could not escape. The hot iron from before had now completely cooled down and lay still on the cold floor. Now in a warm room, she was hugging a young Maple Leaf into her arms to comfort. Her soft voice echoed in his ear. Young Leaf, do you know why I want to become a god? After a moment of silence he said, I don't know. Then she remembered the deep red sky that day and said next, the gods will not be abandoned. No matter what happens, the last thing that can be relied on is only the gods. Maple Leaf bowed her head and asked in a low voice, so at some point I will be abandoned by the saint. Right, aren't I? Just gently reassure you. Don't worry too much, young Leaf. I will absolutely not abandon you. Absolutely. When the day the church purge takes place, dark clouds will cover the sky. There were corpses everywhere. There was a moan echoing in the space. At this time Jacob's whole body trembled backwards, his mouth still moaning, like a wounded animal. Then Jacob howled in terror when looking at the person opposite. Screaming in panic ripped through the atmosphere. In contrast to the other person's fear, he just silently looked at Jacob with iron eyes emanating from his eyes. Bai Guang came to change the scene to the building. The warehouse was in ruins. A sigh was heard. In front of Maple Leaf and the first Maple Leaf were proudly speaking with their arms crossed. We met again, Bai Guang, but he only coldly replied. Friendly. Her apostles were all hurt. This is the kind of love that Maple Leaf is talking about. Hearing that, she just tilted her head and said calmly, knowing that why would you ask? Then he asked again, the little girl and the baby, where is the guy who went with her? But she is still calm. I don't know, is she dead, or is she still alive? The more he listens, the more he can't absorb every word she says. She really is disgusting. I will kill you. Seems like she is very proud, believing in her abilities. Her face remained very calm and turned to her child, calling, young Leaf. Maple Leaf obediently replied, yes, sir. The first Maple Leaf walked forward gracefully, tossing his red hair. He warned, if you interfere, you will hinder me. Stay back and watch. I will survive until I return. As she finished speaking, she immediately rushed to attack Bai Guang. The first Maple Leaf quickly threw a kick aimed at the head. But unfortunately he quickly dodged her attack. Immediately, leaned back again, then first Maple Leaf threw a second kick. This time Bai Guang had no time to dodge. He took the kick to the face, right as he raised his hand to rub the wound on his chin. She continued to take the position, realizing that the situation was not good. Bai Guang clutched the knife in his hand, preparing to counterattack. Bai Guang jumped up to attack. She looked at him teasingly. I heard that your body was damaged a lot due to torture. It seems like really, like at that moment, I didn't feel nervous at all. Then she threw another kick at his face. However different from her expectations. Her calm voice he rang. Anyway, I will win. Bai's face Guang timidly dodged the feet of the first Maple Leaf. The leaves on the tree fell and left. Knocked down the shabby warehouse to the point of having holes in it. The white dress of the first Maple Leaf was stained blood. The sound of heavy breathing echoed in the space. She looked up at the other person who was still standing firmly and couldn't help but exclaim. Monster, are you a monster? But so what? It's quite strong, isn't it? It will be very difficult to move to the front because your joints were all damaged. Right. If you had helped me, the outcome of that battle that day might have been different. Why, aren't you also dissatisfied with that guy? He just looked at her for a while and said, he promised, after finishing this mission, he will let me live like a human in the world, within a few years. After hearing that, she burst out laughing. Ha ha, do you believe those words? Even though he knew she was making fun of him, he still did it. Then she raised her face and scolded him. Doc said, let me tell you something. You will never be able to live like a human. His face coldly stared at the woman in front of him. His eyes filled with disdain. It's extremely, but she still tries to continue. But I still can't understand. You are in your golden age. You have everything. So why? Or is it because of him? Why? Bai Guang. Is it because he holds you so tightly that you can't resist? Then the first Maple Leaf burst out laughing again. Ha ha, he hates you. You idiot, it's stupider than it looks. But it's not too late yet. Join forces with me, to do it again. But before she could finish her sentence, he rushed forward and slashed her stomach. Bai Guang pointed, her voice was cold. She was just like him. After the first Maple Leaf fell, Maple Leaf flew towards her screaming miserably. Young lady, you said you would never abandon his child. The young woman's tears continued to roll down his scarred face. At this moment she lay blankly looking at the person in front of her. She thought of that horrible face again. You was disgust. His words echoed in her mind. She was just like him. Looking at the boy who was crying for her, she gradually opened her lips and caressed the burn on her face. He said sorry. Once again that urgent sound rang out. The scent. Bai Guang witnessed everything but just stood still without saying a word. Immediately after that, Maple Leaf stood up and took a risk. The network swung his fist at him. He just lifted his hand and used the handle of the knife to hit the opponent's face, causing Maple Leaf to fly several meters away. Then he looked at the poor guy in front of him and reminded him, no matter how injured I am, you are not my opponent. But Maple Leaf still didn't listen to what he said and kept screaming, full of resentment. In the end, he helplessly advised, Why are you crying like that? Calm down. What she gave you was not love. Only fear. If fear is love, then is the feeling you have for me right now is love. You are still very young. Forget all the past. Live the life of a human being. Return now. After telling a long story, he concluded with one sentence. That's it. Do you remember? Maple Leaf's face showed extreme surprise. He covered his face and yelled. It was so confusing. What exactly was going on? He still calmly advised him not to get confused anymore. Break the hypnosis on the believer and turn himself in. Maple Leaf is starting to get paranoid again. This is the challenge of God to me. To test my faith. Then he raised his head high and spread his arms excitedly. Yes, this is a test sent by God. Other than that, it is impossible to explain. Okay. My God, my faith will never change. Suddenly Gyeong-soo used his sword to hit him hard on the head. Completely shutting the minds of these guys. They all have the problem of being brainwashed. They have to be cured. Black Leaf had a hard time confronting Jang Wook. Jang Wook still calmly asked, "What have you been doing up until now? Just keep checking the little things. Have you figured it out yet? If you don't do that, you won't be able to beat me. Fight with all your might." Black Leaf looked at his expression but a little bit scared. The next second she screamed, "Red Leaf, Yellow Leaf." The other two who were sitting in a corner stuttered when their names were called. She. Black Leaf immediately screamed, "Come up and give orders. Stand up. Are you just going to sit and watch?" Red Leaf, Yellow Leaf hastily defended, "We were tied up, and the man was talking to you. We couldn't fight back." Hearing that, Jang Wook said with satisfaction, there is nothing more burdensome than his teammates lost their momentum, but instead only hindered them. Suddenly he was surprised to see Black Leaf pull out a black pendulum from her body. She shook the pendulum while shouting at her. The other two, "I told them to stand up." Red Leaf and Yellow Leaf were immediately hypnotized for a moment. Images of warnings from childhood quickly came back. Black Leaf was still holding the pendulum, but next to it was a sharp sickle. When Red Leaf disobeyed, she cut her until she bled. Back to the present, Yellow Leaf went crazy, tears flowing and screaming, I'm sorry sister, I will listen to what Black Leaf repeated again, rushing forward. The two sisters immediately tore off the rope and rushed towards Jang Wook. Red Leaf rushed to attack, but Jang Wook skillfully dodged the attack. He punched Yellow Leaf straight in the face, then glanced at Black Leaf. She was trying to run away as quickly as possible. In my mind only 3 words appeared. Mr. Maple Leaf. At the same time, Maple Leaf's side was also struggling to fight against Gyeong-soo. He was beaten by him until his nose bled. Gyeong-soo still did not stop but continued to gain momentum to prepare for the next attack. Named Maple Leaf, not missing a single blow. When the tip of the sword was close to his body, Gyeong-soo turned the sword slightly, and the back of the sword hit Maple Leaf's neck, causing him to gasp in pain, and then fall to the floor. Gyeong-soo growled, commanding voice, breaking the hypnosis on the followers. But he still persisted, no, and at the same time reached into his shirt to plot something. As soon as he pulled out the pendulum, he was shocked. Gyeong-soo saw through it and easily brushed it off. He continued to command, I repeated it again, broke the hypnosis, was beaten until his mouth bled, but he still refused to give up. No, now Gyeong-soo is angry. It seems like you've been brainwashed more than the others. Okay, let's see how long you can endure. Maple Leaf also continued, that's right, I can't believe it, but now I know. You're Bai Guang. Gyeong-soo replied calmly, just now realizing it. Maple Leaf slowly recounted, I noticed that there was something in strange Black Lespedez's fight. But of course, it's impossible for me to believe you're Bai Guang, unless I've lost my mind. What you said that day. Bai Guang once said to Maple Leaf in Life First, you are just like him. Maple Leaf continued to speak, responding exactly as he said. He is just like a bodhisattva. Gyeong-soo widened his eyes and asked in bewilderment, what are you doing? What are you talking about? Maple Leaf trembled and stood up to continue. Violence and fear. Bodhisattva solved everything with violence and fear. You are the same. Learned how to solve it everything through violence and fear. You're trying to solve everything the same way bodhisattvas used to do. Right? Gyeong-soo didn't listen to his words and was sarcastic. Maybe because as the leader of a cult, your ability to show off is very good. He refuses to stop. I told you to live the life of a human being. What does that mean? How can you live like a real person? Have you ever lived a human life? Kyung-soo replied decisively, I don't know. Hearing that, the other guy tried to protest even more. If so, then, why did you tell me to live like a real person? This is everything I learned. I will tell that person. I have learned how to receive love. Bai Guang asked when he was young, what is living as a human being? But only received the answer that he didn't know from the first Bai Guang. He asked the boy again. Why did he ask that? The second generation Bai Guang replied, I always told you to live a human life. Why didn't you know? He kindly explained to the boy. There was no exact answer. Everyone's thoughts about life are different. Hey kid, I think every life is a story. We are the main character in our story. Everyone has a different story. The ending are all predetermined. Because all humans will die eventually. Even so, don't you think we should make sure we won't have a single regret? As we look back on our likes at the moment of our death. I mean, if you want to end it with a happy ending. The boy Bai Guang then replied absent-mindedly. Then it's okay to live however you want. Former Bai Guang seriously said. Do anything, if you feel happy, but that's absolute. Not to do is to hurt your life other people. Do not respect and harm other people's lives. But do you want others to respect your life? How unreasonable. Hearing that, Bai Guang the second generation shyly asked. So can I live the life of a human for the rest of my life? Why? The more I receive training from a bodhisattva, I'm afraid I will become like that person. Bai Guang grew up after listening to my heart. The boy's situation comforts him. No need to worry too much. He gently placed his hand on his head and said, You have such thick hair that it won't fall out like him. After hearing this sentence, the second generation Bai Guang's face looked puzzled. For a moment, little Bai Guang replied, Are you kidding me? Big Bai Guang spoke disparagingly. What a boring kid. It's silly. Cultivate a sense of humor. Kid. And then he said seriously, There's nothing bad about that breed of people. It means you're getting stronger. The boy was skeptical when he heard that. In the end, that's okay. But if you also hurt someone, Big Bai Guang frankly admitted. Yes, at some point you will have to kill someone. This is the number your fate and also the way to survive in this place. If you keep killing someone you will gradually get used to it. Your emotions will also become dull. At that time remember these things what I said today. Don't use other people's fear for your own benefit. You have to protect the people who are important to you. If it were you, surely we'll do it. After rewinding this flashback, Kyung-soo spoke up and replied to Maple Leaf. I have learned how to use fear like that. Maple Leaf asked tremblingly, So have you lived that way? When you received this question, your mind flashed back to the image of Phoenix. Then you answered him, I tried. Maple Leaf continued speaking. Are you talking about Bai Guang? Sure, because he was so scared. No one dared to touch Bai Guang. But then what happened? Both he and Phoenix died. In the end, the ultimate level of fear, it's a god. It's impossible to fight that person. Kyung-soo replied with a grey face. I also tried to fight that guy. Even though I died. But I'm not ashamed of my previous life. What about you? Do you dare to be frank? Maple Leaf smiled slightly and replied. Frankly, I already told you. I have learned what to do to receive love. Looking at him at that time, Kyung-soo could only utter 3 words. So pitiful. Maple Leaf continued to speak. When I saw him I realized. That's right. Unless he's crazy, no one would dare to believe this will happen. Bai Guang has come back to life. That's right. I haven't been abandoned. Something crazy happened, so that means as long as he survives, that person will also return to my side. Right. As soon as he finished speaking, Kyung-soo turned his sword to start. If I broke the hypnosis, I definitely wouldn't be able to survive. Right when he was about to swing it at me, when he hit him, a voice shouted from behind. Standing still, Kyung-soo stopped and looked back. His eyes widened when he saw the person who had just entered. That person spoke again threateningly. If you dare to move, I will kill this girl. It is none other than Black Leaf and Gyeong-hee who are being held hostage. Gyeong-hee is scared and trembling and calls out. Kyung-soo just saw her. Maple Leaf happily spoke up. Black Leaf, are you here? Seeing your face in tatters, Black Leaf immediately asked kindly. Lord Maple Leaf, are you injured? She clenched her teeth in anger, looked at Kyung-soo. Kyung-soo also frowned and looked back at her. He silently remembered that kid at that time. At this time Black Leaf shouted her name again. Damn, how dare you do? Maple Leaf is the person injured. So it's you, the guy in the rumor. Looks quite strong. Maple Leaf called out for help again. Black Leaf saved me. Black Leaf replied Mr. Maple Leaf. Then threatened Gyeong-soo. If she dares to move, I will kill her. Gyeong-hee then started to shed tears in fear. Hoo Gyeong-soo. The whole room became quiet for a moment. Gyeong-soo said harshly, I won't say it again. Let her go. Black Leaf intended to continue to threaten him. You were the one. But before she could finish her sentence, Gyeong-soo rushed at him like lightning. Her right arm holding the weapon was cut off in an instant. For a split second, she didn't have time to figure out what had just happened. She could only open her eyes wide. And then Gyeong-soo immediately emitted murderous aura, repeating it, clearly saying not to say it again. But then the pain came, making Black Leaf scream loudly. After Gyeong-hee was freed, Gyeong-soo quickly said, Jo Gyeong-hee, you go away and avoid it. Gyeong-hee also quickly replied, yes. After dealing with Black Leaf, Gyeong-soo turned to Maple Leaf. Well, then, suddenly he was stunned when he saw that he was no longer in his old position. Maple Leaf was secretly moving up the stairs. Gyeong-soo immediately chased after him, planning to run away. Seeing that, Maple Leaf shouted, Black Leaf, stop him. Black Leaf suppressed the pain inside to carry out his command. When she rushed closer to Gyeong-soo, he gently swung his sword once and then flew straight away. Gyeong-soo slowly took each step said following Maple Leaf, using the girl he spent his childhood with as a shield, wanting to run away so much. That guy still didn't give up and cried out, Black Leaf. Black Leaf was bleeding, non-stop but still trying to carry out the order. Yes, Lord Maple Leaf, named Maple Leaf reminded harshly. Even if I die, I have to take the time to escape. You know. Black Leaf cried. The line replied. Yes, Lord Maple Leaf. Gyeong-soo witnessed this scene and just said indifferently, these two are crazy. Black Leaf tried with his obsession to get out. He must get out. His eyes flashed with fear. Scared, he told himself, then returned to that person. That person, my faith. He only worried about escaping for himself even though Black Leaf was being chopped to pieces. Her eyes gradually lost the sense of life. Those eyes still followed Maple Leaf's every step. Before he completely disappeared, Black Leaf called out softly, Lord Maple Leaf. She hesitated for a moment, then looked at him affectionately and said, I love you. Maple Leaf's eyes opened wide. His eyes were full of familiar Maple Leaf silhouettes. He remembered when he was a child there was the little girl also kept following him and saying, I love you. At that time they were just little boys. Black Leaf kept telling him, I love you.